everybody. If you guys are tuning in for the very first time, my name is Holly Lee. I am the founder of hollylee.co. I run a VIP coaching cohort for the longest time for the last nearly 5 years. I'm nominated by my YouTube and LinkedIn community to be the Amazon coach, but I am not. Again, I am not an Amazon coach, but I love to live and breathe through the Amazon's high hiring bar of diving deep on the thinking really critical in answering your interview questions using the STAR method. Again, Amazon did not invent the STAR method, but the bar, it is extremely high out of all the employers that I've worked for, and I have worked for most of the 90% of the maintained companies out there. But enough about all of that. I wanted to quickly introduce you to Matt.
So I joined Amazon about 13 years ago. I actually joined as a contract recruiter supporting our fraud prevention business, moved to a full-time role supporting that business, then moved to a recruiting manager role for that business. That was an interesting business to support. It was a very technical organization. They were one of the first in Amazon to really get into machine learning as well. And so those roles became important for the organization. From there, as Holly mentioned, we had some reorganization within Amazon. There was a bigger consumer organization coming together. Our recruiting organizations did the same thing. And at that time, I moved to kind of some centers of excellence type recruiting teams and leading those around events recruiting, where we had some teams based in Seattle recruiting together for software engineers, and then also helped hire some of the first economists in Amazon, supporting our chief economists at the time, and some of our research scientists, machine learning scientists for consumer. I did that for 4 or 5 years, and then I kind of leaned into Amazon's working backwards process and narrative writing culture, and I wrote an idea around a program called Amazon Future Engineer. This program at a high level was interested in making sure all students, particularly underrepresented and underserved students, had access to high quality computer science education. And then that became my next job. And so I was fortunate to get some support from our business teams to start this program and then eventually scale the program. In my time with the program, we reached about 10 million students globally with computer science education, including about 130,000 students in the US with a full computer science course and focusing on helping teachers with professional development so they could bring a computer science course to their school. And then my last with that program, I was supporting international launches, and we've launched that program now outside the US in Canada, the UK, France, Germany, and India. And I believe since I've moved on, they've launched in a few more. But that was really interesting work, dealing with the public education system I'd never had experience with before, and public educators and students, K through 12, very interesting. And then education systems outside the US, and then also what the perceptions were of Amazon working with public schools and things like that was very interesting. I moved about 3 years ago into the role I'm in now, which is Director of AWS Early Career, and have been doing this role. I didn't have experience prior with AWS, so this was a new business for me to support. And then the early career space was new for me as well. So it's been really interesting learning and then hiring on a scale that I never would have dreamed of before to AWS. And so that's been a great experience. So yeah, that's a bit about my journey here at Amazon. And then most recently moving to AWS. The bridge between the last two roles was I was helping a lot of young learners learn about technology and computer science education. And I was really keen on how can we bridge that to great jobs and specifically in early career.
I think you're underselling yourself a little bit. It's not about Matt's background being in talent acquisition, meaning recruiting, right? It is hard to get promoted within Amazon and doing it multiple times. It is rare. Most people at Amazon, I'm not saying this to freak you guys out. It is true. And I'm very matter of fact. You know, you guys are here because you know that I'm very transparent. I don't tell you things you want to hear. I tell you things you need to know. A lot of people retire as a level 7 because it's very hard to get promoted from 5 to 6. And once you're at that level 6, that is mark. Amazon to me, because I have worked at Microsoft, I worked at Meta, most recently Facebook, I work at Google in my earlier on in the career, even though it is level to level on thing to thing, but the hiring bar and the scope and scale at Amazon is 2 stripe above. I can confidently share that with you as well, Matt, because I was there. Even as level 7 at Meta is really, when you look at scope and scale, is more like a 5. So let's chat a little bit about the SkillBased program. It was launched, I believe I saw an article pretty recently. What is that about, and who would be the right audience for it?
As a part of the early career remit, you You might think of that primarily as hiring from universities and four-year schools globally. And that's true. But we've also started to get more into what we would describe skills-based hiring, which might be hiring folks who may not have a four-year degree. And this has already been happening historically in our data center hiring, but now we're looking at it in other areas. And the essential notion is we call that Amazon's raising the bar. So we believe there's bar-raising builders who might not have a four-year degree that would still be a valuable employee at Amazon, AWS. And so with that notion, looking at where we might be able to remove degree requirements where we don't think it's necessary to hire a bar-raising builder. The second part is focusing on communities of talent that we can support into getting into these pools. And primarily in the last year or so, we've been focusing on community collegeships, notably the Seattle college system, which is in, of course, Seattle, but it's a few community colleges in the Seattle area, and then also overlapping our HQ2 region around Arlington, working with North Virginia Community College on some programming and working with their students where we have these jobs available. And then the last part that we mentioned in that recent article was around a micro internship concept that we're going to start with North Virginia Community College, but it'll essentially be some asynchronous work and tasks which students can get paid for, but accommodate something outside your traditional 12-week internship, understanding that some students may not be able to relocate across the country or step out for 12 weeks to do a traditional internship, and they'll still give them an opportunity to get some paid experience working along with North Virginia Community College and AWS.
So all the times that you've been with Amazon, Matt, now, did you participate or were you a facilitator in any of the interview training, bar raiser program or anything like that? Do you have time for that stuff?
Yeah, I'm a bar raiser at Amazon, so I've gone through the bar raiser program, participate active bar raiser at Amazon. And interestingly, I did that training at the beginning of my last role when we were in the business, and that exposed me to then bar raising for all sorts of roles across Amazon, including some roles I never had been familiar with before. We had a services business and we were hiring full-time electricians. I had to learn about and get experience. So I've been pretty active in bar raiser, and then also have supported other bar raisers in training as they've been doing that and supporting their process as well. So mostly in that. And then towards my earlier time at Amazon was more, I supported some of the making great hiring decisions training that happens for folks to get prepared to interview others at Amazon.
Now, what type of questions were you asking for an EE guy? I mean, this is completely outside of your software consumer and product background. What were the competency or LP that you were focusing?
I mean, you really have to lean in, and especially as a bar raiser, a non-technical bar raiser on maybe a technical loop generally, you really have to lean into the leadership principles. And there's generally most the competencies are oriented around that. And then we'll have some folks that can look at the technical competencies. Those leadership principles, along with being prepared for questions like, tell me about a time type of thing you should be prepared for. And those are the types of questions that I would ask. And I think I didn't find it too unusual to interview those, so you can still get a good sense of their impact. And should they, as you mentioning towards the start of this, like working through the STAR method, getting to the results and quantifying the results, you can still get a good sense of their work and impact.
The one thing I talk a lot about is the 60-second spiel. I know a lot of Amazonians, especially the one who's been there for 10 plus years, some of them may not agree with me. And Matt, I would love to hear your point in that. And I like to ask a lot of the folks who are still at Amazon for their feedback. So basically how I came up with the 60-second, not elevator pitch, but basically per each answer, as in playing ping pong. We're not talking about the entire interview. Each question is a minute to wrap it up. It usually takes about 10 minutes or so, even longer. But what I'm trying to teach my audience in private coaching or my VIP coaching program is going back and forth, like playing ping pong, because it all started in Alexa, where I have been yelled at a lot. I'm very transparent, but I love my growth opportunity at Amazon is because it doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter if you have a lot of data. It matters how concise your data, your matrices are, and you're able to present that. So because of being in a room with all these executives from consumer to Alexa and then Kindle and whatnot, I've learned to time myself 60 seconds from the moment I start making a presentation, no more than 60 seconds, or someone's going to tell me to get the hell out of the room. To avoid doing so, I taught myself the 60-minute spiel. So when I left Amazon, I tried the same spiel at Meta. They did not like that. They asked me to slow down. I've been called, I'm too Amazonian, and they haven't even worked at Amazon yet, by the way. They're like, yeah, we have some Amazonian in here. They don't work out because they're going too fast. No one want to see your white paper. I'm like, what? No white paper? Then how do you know how to build the entire strategy, right? So nothing? Like, nope, we don't want to know. We don't, just tell us what you need. I'm like, well, I need data to prove my point. The whole theory of the 60-second elevator speech or to time yourself is you actually have 8 to 10 sentences to answer every single interview answer. What is your take on that in the 60-second or less?
Being simple, concise is good. A minute sounds fast, but as you get up to talking to director, VP level, you definitely have limited time to make your point. To give some context, so when you switch roles at Amazon, you have to interview. I had to do that in the role I'm in currently, and I hadn't done it for a while. I practiced interviewing, and I would Zoom tape myself, and I was looking at the time coming down. I didn't get down to a minute. I was coming down from initially like 5 to 6 minute responses to maybe like a third of that. And I think what helps was like, you get what you said, get your main points in order, understand the structure of how you want to present your answers, and then agree that you want to inspire a dialogue and two-way conversation. And if you go on for 5-6 minutes, you kind of suck the air out of the room, and the person might have wanted to get in there in between and you didn't allow for it. So I think, 1 to 2 minutes is probably a sweet spot on initial response, and generally being clear, concise, but also getting through the entire kind of STAR process and method is important and generally works well.
When it comes to making presentations and being able to influence at a level 7 and level 8 levels, man, and this is more appropriate for you at the moment, what would you say it is the best tips that you could provide for those who's interviewing for level 7 and level 8? What differentiate the two level when it comes to how they show up for their interview at AWS?
A lot of it's kind of the scope and scale of what you've done. I think in terms of how you present yourself and communication, those are finer points that I believe get taken into consideration, but there's really kind of a scope and scale that usually is a determining factor. And I think it's important then, as you're demonstrating your abilities and talking about your experience, to make sure that's very clear in what you've accomplished and well articulated, documented in your resume, hopefully, so that comes across to the interviewer. And it's helpful also to understand, if you're interviewing for a certain business or something, you understand the size and scope at which they're operating, and then you might be able to kind of merge those two things a bit to understand better where the expectations might lie. But that's really the part that I think would differentiate folks. And you might have done something like a kind of a project, but if you're doing it for some hundreds of folks versus some millions of folks, the challenge and like even small problems can become quite large at different scales. And so I think it's important to, if you have been operating at a very large scale and or built things from the ground up, that you are able to walk through and quantify that impact.
Is Amazon and the group companies, including AWS, releasing graduate position for the States?
Yeah, we have been making some hires in some areas, and certainly intern positions have been open. And I would keep an eye out, as potentially business conditions change, that can change as well. So you might have observed just a more limited volume if you've been following like year over year, but I believe we have had some. They just might have come and gone pretty fast.
When does the live program start? I'm just going to assume that it is the skill-based program. Has that started yet, Matt?
Yeah, so the skills-based, it's really more of an internal program. The opportunity for folks to apply to roles without degrees exists now, and there's not necessarily one spot where you can find all these roles that may not require a degree, but you can look at some of the support roles in AWS, some of the data center roles, and you'll see that opportunity where we're working with some of the community colleges. That is active, happening right now. We also keep your eyes peeled, but we do sometimes school agnostic events and virtual sometimes, including over Twitch and running some of those sessions. And those are global. So we've done some of those in India. We've done some of those in the States. So you can keep an eye open for that. And those are good, I would say, professional preparation type workshops we'll have business leaders on the call. We'll do mock interviews. You'll hear from some of the recruiters, and then they'll also talk about some of the open positions. So those are ongoing. And then the last on the micro internship, that will probably be coming with, it's specific initially with the Northern Virginia Community College, and that's coming probably towards the...
If you're familiar with the Amazon hiring process, what do you actually look for? How can I maximize my chances of getting an interview?
So definitely you need to understand the leadership principles of Amazon, study them. I think you can find pretty good resources publicly on the types of questions which may get asked against those leadership principles. I definitely think it's worth the time and effort to practice. I agree with Holly on practicing your answer, having your key points mapped out, making sure when you give a response, you're able to traverse the whole STAR process. And then particularly where I see folks typically drop off is, or whatever, the result is missing in their answer, or it might be there, but hard to quantify. And then also I'd probably be careful of giving examples where you have maybe a good example, but it's fairly recent and you don't have a result yet. Those are hard then as a person interviewing you to make sense of, is this raising the bar or not, because I can't quantify it from then, hence like the scope and size of what you're talking about, I can't really figure out yet. So I'd be careful on those responses. And then after that, I think where you're able to give like a more novel answer or something that might differentiate you a bit from what you think your interviewer might hear a lot, those are good. But more importantly, I think is getting through that whole STAR process and having a good size and scope of impact.
I recently interviewed for AWS Internships this summer, but I was notified that I'm put on a wait list due to excess headcount. Is there something I can do to get off the wait list?
If that was the case and you're notified of that, I don't have any review information. We do have a certain volume of internship available any given year. And that said, I would definitely try to be earlier than later, of course, when you're applying and trying to network maybe to get interviews for the internship. I think that is key. Depending on the season and where you go to school, you may or may not see AWS representatives any given year. So definitely you be proactive, self-drive that. And also it's on the wait list. Opportunities could come depending on different business conditions that may arise. But I wouldn't have any additional information beyond that. Just general tips that I'm able to offer.
Is there any chance will the SkillBased program be open as application for people who already have a bachelor's degree and who want to work with AWS through this program?
Yeah, so I mean, again, if you want to apply to roles that don't require a degree and you have a degree, that's fine. And then there's just additional programming. So the example I use a lot when I talk to them is your average, and I'm in Nashville now, but I've been based in Seattle for quite a while. Your average computer science student at University of Washington usually has a lot of resources in the form of their peers or maybe their professor that can speak to them a bit about what it's like to interview and even intern at Amazon. And that's really helped your average student maybe at North Seattle Community College, where they do now offer a four-year computer science degree, may not have those same resources. And so what we're trying to do there is just make sure there's a professional readiness equity that we can provide both sets of students that might be looking for jobs. So that's there regardless. And then in the case you might be interested in some of the jobs that don't have a degree requirement, you have a degree, is perfectly fine.
Do you have any recommendation on how a senior director can land a job outside of being able to articulate and sharing their example around the STAR method and all of that?
You have to look at the size and the company you're at with respect to not just Amazon, but wherever you're looking. So I think that's important to make sure you're looking at appropriate roles and engaging around appropriate roles. So that might be, a lot of places are smaller than Amazon, so you might need to look at roles that would be different, not necessarily a director title. And it can go the other way too. If you're at a bigger company going to a smaller company or something, the titles might be different. So I think kind of helpful to make sure you're trying to engage and apply and get into the interview process on appropriate roles. So making sure you're doing that. In terms of technology, I mean, I don't know if I have anything novel other than technology is kind of changing by the day lately and, generative AI and all that. I think at the very least, it's good to be up to speed on those things, being curious about those things. Of course, learn and be curious is an important leadership principle at Amazon. So where you might not have direct professional experience, maybe you're seeking certifications that AWS offers or learning modules that AWS AWS offers to show that curiosity, trying to keep up with the new technology, even though it might not be prevalent in your company, I think can show a good sign of initiative and curiosity.
Just wanted to know if there's any job opportunities having career gap. And since I felt that my resume is not getting shortlisted, maybe because of less experience. Let me ask you a clarifying question, Amma. When you mention career gap, what are we referring to? Is it 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? I can tell you right now, this is the number one question that I'm getting a lot, average of 3 to 5 years. And I think that's forgiven since COVID, right? A lot of people are struggling to come back and land the right role. Many have to pay the bill. I get it. You're the head of household or you're a single mom or dad. But I personally do not think that career gap is an issue. It's about the story behind it. And I also have some customer, because they were laid off at COVID, they went back and got a master's degree or PhD. Whatever your priority is, it's about how you tell your story and why you're taking time off. So don't let that hamper your confidence level. And also, should probably say that many of you are afraid to negotiate when it comes to salary. 2 years is nothing. Oh, come on. 2 years is nothing. I mentioned COVID. That's 4 years ago. And 10 years. I've heard 10 years, 5 years in average. So remember, tell a good story and why you're taking a gap. Do not share things that are personal to the interviewer. Thank you so much, everybody, for being there. Either you're new or you're old. Thank you so much for your support. Please thank Matt for his time being there. And thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.